Wow, you really weren't kidding about wanting to explore a truly unique culture. I am so excited for this deep dive into the Lotha Naga people. It looks like we're in for quite the journey.
I know, right? It's incredible how they've managed to hold on to their heritage so strongly while adapting to the modern world. I
Yeah.
mean, we're talking about people who were once known for headhunting, but now they're prominent figures in Nagaland's political scene.
It really makes you wonder how they managed such a dramatic transformation. Like, did they just abandon their old ways, or did they find a way to kind of integrate them into modern life? I am really curious to explore that. But maybe before we jump ahead too far, let's start with the basics. Where did the Lotha Naga people come from, and how did they end up in Woka?
Well, their origins, like a lot of the Naga tribes, are believed to be somewhere in the east,
Mm.
and they migrated over time, eventually settling in the Woka district. What's really interesting is that they set up a very distinct societal structure organized around these independent fortified villages.
So each village was basically like its own self-governing entity.
Exactly. Each village operated almost like a mini-state, with its own council of elders or a chieftain who would make decisions and keep things in order. And as you mentioned, headhunting played a pretty significant role in all of this. It wasn't just random violence, it was really woven into their beliefs and their warrior culture.
Okay, I have to admit, the idea of headhunting is pretty jarring to our modern sensibilities. What was the cultural and maybe even spiritual significance of this practice for them back then?
Well, for Lotha Naga, headhunting wasn't about cruelty. It was a way for them to prove their strength, earn honor, and even connect with spiritual forces.
So taking an enemy's head was seen as like capturing their essence, their power, which would then benefit the victor and their community.
Exactly.
Like,
But of course, as we know, this practice eventually came to an end. The arrival of British colonialism and Christian missionaries in the late 19th century had a huge impact on the Lotha people.
I bet that must have been a period of just immense cultural upheaval. How did the Lotha Naga react to such a dramatic shift in their worldview? Did they resist, or was there some level of acceptance?
While some resisted for sure, many Lotha Naga chose to embrace Christianity and the opportunities that came with it, like Western education and new systems of governance.
It's really interesting how adaptable they were. They seem to find a way to integrate these new ideas without completely erasing their past.
And speaking of holding on to their past, I'm really fascinated by their festivals. They have these incredibly vibrant celebrations that seem to blend their agricultural roots with their warrior heritage.
Oh, yeah, I read about those. What's the one called Toku Imang? It's their main post-harvest celebration, right?
Yes, exactly. Tokomong. It's full of feasting, traditional dances, and this really unique ritual of forgiveness.
Forgiveness during a harvest festival. That's a really interesting combination. What's the thinking behind that?
Well, it's a testament to their strong community values. You see, Toku Among isn't just about celebrating a good harvest. It's about strengthening the bonds within the community. They encourage forgiveness and reconciliation so that everyone can enter the new season with a clean slate and a unified spirit.
So it's a way to address any conflict proactively and maintain harmony within the community.
I really like that. What about other festivals? Do they also reflect this focus on community and tradition?
Oh, absolutely. Pikumung, for example, is another fascinating one. It originally had ties to headhunting, but they've reinterpreted it in a way that celebrates their warrior heritage and cultural pride in a way that aligns with their values today.
I see. So instead of abandoning a practice that was once so central to their identity, they found a way to give it new meaning in a modern context.
Exactly. And this ability to reinterpret and adapt is key to understanding how they've been able to balance tradition and progress so well. Their festivals aren't just relics of the past, they're living expressions of their culture constantly evolving.
It's a beautiful reminder that culture isn't static. It's dynamic and ever evolving. But speaking of forces that shape identity, we can't overlook the role of their clan system.
Mm.
It's a pretty significant part of Lotha society, right? You're absolutely right. The clan system is deeply ingrained in their social fabric. Each clan traces its lineage back to a common ancestor, and this patrilineal structure influences everything from inheritance and family names to marriage practices and even social standing.
Wow. It sounds like the clan system really does permeate every aspect of their lives. But how does it actually work in practice? Are there specific rules or rituals that govern how people interact within and between clans?
Absolutely. There are very specific rules about who can marry whom, how property is passed down, and even how conflicts are resolved. And what's remarkable is that these traditions, including the role of the panchayats, their traditional village councils, still hold a lot of sway today.
So the panchayats are still actively involved in resolving disputes and making decisions within the community.
Oh, definitely. They're a vital part of the Lotha justice system, and their decisions are highly respected. Think of them as a bridge between the past and present, ensuring that the wisdom of their ancestors continues to guide their action.
It's fascinating how they've managed to integrate these traditional structures into a modern society. It speaks to their deep respect for their heritage and their ability to adapt without losing their cultural core. But we've talked a lot about the social and historical aspects of their culture. I'm really curious to learn more about their artistic side, especially their famous wood carving.
Their artistic heritage is truly something to behold. The Lotha Naga are masters of wood carving, and their homes are often adorned with these incredibly intricate designs depicting animals, warriors, and historical motifs. It's like stepping into a living museum.
I'm trying to picture these carvings. What kind of stories do they tell about their relationship with nature, their history, their sense of identity?
Well, the carvings often depict animals that are native to their region, showing their connection to the natural world. And then you have warrior figures and scenes from their past, celebrating their heritage and their bravery. And then there are these intricate geometric patterns that represent their beliefs and their cosmology. It's like their history and worldview are etched into the very structure of their homes.
I love the idea of their homes being these physical expressions of their cultural identity. And what about their clothing? I've read that they have a very unique style.
Their attire is equally captivating. Men often wear these colorful lothalohi shawls, while women wear beautifully hand-woven skirts with unique jewelry. Each piece tells a story conveying information about their clan, social standing, and even their personal style.
So it's not just about covering themselves, it's about communicating who they are to the world. What about music and dance? I imagine those also play a big role in their cultural expression.
Absolutely. Their folk songs and dances are more than just entertainment. They are powerful forms of storytelling. They use them to pass down their history, legends, and moral values from one generation to the next. Especially during festivals, these performances come alive, transforming into vibrant celebrations of their cultural heritage.
It's amazing how they've woven art and storytelling into the very fabric of their lives. It makes me wonder if their food is equally expressive and rooted in tradition.
Their food is definitely a testament to their resourcefulness and their love of bold flavors. They really enjoy smoked meats, bamboo shoots, and fermented ingredients, creating dishes that are truly unique and delicious.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
What are some of the signature dishes that really capture the essence of Lotha cuisine?
Well, one classic example is pork with bamboo shoot. It's slow cooked with local herbs and spices, and it's a really hearty dish that reflects their agricultural practices and their connection to the land.
Okay, that is definitely going on my list of things to try if I ever get the chance to visit Nagaland. What about that fermented yam leaf dish I read about, anishi? Is that what it's called?
Ah, yes, anishi, that's right. It's a unique delicacy made from fermented yam leaves, and it adds this tangy, almost sour flavor to their curries and stews. And of course, no Lotha gathering is complete without zutho, their traditional rice beer.
It sounds like food plays a really significant role in their social gatherings and celebrations. It's not just about sustenance, it's about bringing people together and reinforcing those community bonds.
Exactly. Their communal feasts, especially during festivals, are a sight to behold. They're a beautiful expression of their hospitality, their generosity, and their deep-rooted sense of community.
It's amazing how every aspect of their culture, from their social structures to their artistic expressions to their culinary traditions, seems to emphasize connection. Connection to their ancestors, connection to their land, and connection to each other. But how does this emphasis on tradition hold up in the face of modernity? We've talked about their political engagement and their adaptation to new ideas, but I'm curious to explore how the everyday Lotha Naga reconcile their heritage with the demands of a rapidly changing world.
That's a really important question, and it's one that we'll dig into further as we continue our deep dive, because while their past is undeniably fascinating, what's equally compelling is how they're actively shaping their future while still honoring their roots.
This is where things get really interesting. We're not just talking about preserving artifacts in a museum. We're talking about a living, breathing culture that's being actively transmitted to younger generations.
Exactly. And that's what we'll explore next. How the Lotha Naga are navigating the complexities of modernity while ensuring that their cultural heritage not only survives but thrives in the years to come.
It's mind-boggling to think about this balancing act. The Lotha Naga trying to juggle their traditions with this fast-paced world we live in. It's almost like trying to mix ancient rhythms with a modern electronic beat. I don't even know where to begin unpacking all of that.
Well, maybe their political engagement is a good place to start. Remember how we were talking about how adaptable they are? That's really evident in Nagaland's government.
Hmm.
The Lotha Naga have a strong presence there, and they're actively shaping the region's future. They're definitely not just clinging to the past, they're helping to write the next chapter.
I am really curious about the whole urbanization thing and how it impacts this balancing act. I imagine moving from these small rural villages to these bustling cities like Kohima and Dimapur must make it pretty tough to keep their traditions alive.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Urbanization exposes them to this whole world of new opportunities and ideas. Right. Which can be exciting, but also kind of overwhelming. It's like stepping onto a high-speed train. You're moving forward, but you might feel a little disconnected from where you came from.
Exactly. So, how do they deal with that tension? Is it a constant struggle between the appeal of city life and the traditions that tie them to their rural heritage?
I mean, that tension is definitely there. A lot of Lotha Naga who move to cities find themselves living in two worlds.
Hmm.
They might work in modern offices, embrace new technologies, and have a more cosmopolitan lifestyle, but they still feel this deep connection to their rural roots, their clan, their festivals.
So, it's like this constant negotiation between embracing the new and honoring the old. And speaking of new ideas, we've talked about the influence of Christianity. I'd love to hear more about how that has shaped their culture over time, especially considering the huge shift away from things like headhunting.
Christianity has definitely been a major force. It brought new belief systems, moral codes, and social structures that were very different from their traditional animistic beliefs. But what's really interesting is that they didn't just throw away their cultural core. It's more like adding layers, not erasing.
So they found a way to kind of blend elements of Christianity with their existing traditions.
Exactly. Their festivals, language crafts, all of these enduring elements of their heritage are still so vibrant. They've adapted their practices, sometimes reinterpreting them through a Christian lens, to create something unique that reflects their journey.
It really shows how fluid cultural identity can be. It suggests that you don't have to sacrifice who you are to embrace new influences. It's about finding ways to weave those threads together into something new that reflects both your past and present.
You said that perfectly. The Lotha Naga are a great example of that. They're living proof that cultural identity isn't static. It can grow and change while still staying true to its roots.
That's a lesson that goes way beyond Nagaland. But zooming back in, I'm curious about the steps the Lotha Naga are taking to make sure their cultural heritage not only survives, but actually thrives in the middle of all these rapid changes.
Their approach to cultural preservation is really multifaceted and inspiring. It's not just about protecting objects or rituals. It's about instilling a sense of pride and identity in their young people, making sure that the next generation carries the torch.
That makes a lot of sense. But how exactly do they pass on that torch in a world that's becoming more and more dominated by technology and global influences?
It all starts at the grassroots level within families and communities.
Yeah.
The elders play a crucial role in sharing traditional knowledge through storytelling, teaching crafts, and just by living their culture in their everyday lives. They're the living embodiment of Lotha heritage.
It's like creating a living chain that connects the wisdom of the past to the energy of the present. But do they ever have trouble keeping younger generations engaged? Especially with all the distractions of the digital world and the lure of global trends.
Well, of course there are challenges. It's something that happens everywhere, not just with the Lotha Naga. The appeal of modern life can sometimes overshadow tradition. But what's impressive is that they recognize these challenges and are actively looking for solutions.
Tell me more. What kind of strategies are they using to make sure their cultural heritage stays relevant and interesting for the younger generation? Are they embracing technology or finding other creative ways to bridge that gap between tradition and modernity?
They're actually doing both. They're not afraid of technology. In fact, they're using it to their advantage. Social media has become a really powerful tool for them to document and share their cultural practices with a wider audience, including their own young people who might be living in cities far from their ancestral villages.
That's so smart. It allows them to connect with their roots in a way that's both accessible and engaging. It's like building a virtual bridge back to their heritage.
Exactly. And it's not just about social media. They're also incorporating technology into their education systems, creating digital archives of their cultural heritage, and even exploring things like virtual reality to bring their history and traditions to life for a tech-savvy audience.
I love how they're weaving technology into their efforts to preserve their culture. They're not just passively protecting the past, they're finding new ways to make it relevant for the future. But what about their traditional institutions? What role do things like the panchayats play in all of this?
The panchayats are still very much alive and well in Lotha society. They help maintain social order, uphold cultural values, and resolve conflicts in a way that respects both tradition and the realities of modern life.
So they act as a stabilizing force, making sure that the values and principles that have guided Lotha society for so long continue to be relevant in our rapidly changing world.
Exactly. They embody the Lotha Naga's ability to adapt and innovate while remaining true to their core identity.
It sounds like they've created a system where tradition and progress can exist together, each one making the other stronger. But are there ever any tensions or disagreements that come up? Do people disagree on how to interpret certain values or how to adapt certain practices for a modern context?
Tensions are bound to happen. It's a complex dance trying to balance tradition and modernity. But what's really impressive is that they approach these challenges with a lot of pragmatism and open-mindedness.
So they're willing to have those difficult conversations and come up with solutions that honor both their heritage and their vision for the future. That's quite a balancing act.
It really is. And it reminds us that preserving culture isn't about rigidly clinging to the past. It's about finding ways to adapt and evolve while staying connected to the values that define a culture. And that's something the Lotha Naga do exceptionally well.
We've been focusing mainly on the internal dynamics of the Lotha Naga community, but I'm curious about how they navigate their place within India and the global community.
Now, that's a question that deserves its own deep dive. It's one thing to preserve your own traditions within your community, but it's another thing to interact with a wider world that might not always understand or appreciate what makes you unique. And that's exactly what we'll be exploring next. How do the Lotha Naga assert their cultural sovereignty while still engaging in meaningful dialogue and collaboration with the outside world?
So we've talked about this delicate balance the Lotha Naga people are trying to find. How do they hold on to their own unique identity while also engaging with this larger world of India and the global community as a whole?
It's a tightrope walk that a lot of indigenous groups have to deal with, trying to maintain their cultural sovereignty while also participating in a global society that often pushes for assimilation. It's like you're trying to preserve your heritage while engaging with a world that doesn't always understand or value your traditions.
That's a great way to put it. So how do they manage this? How do they walk that tightrope? What kind of strategies have they used to assert their cultural identity on a global stage while still being a part of India?
One thing that really stands out is their dedication to education. They see it as a powerful tool for empowering themselves, making sure that their voices are heard both within India and on a global level.
That makes a lot of sense. Education gives them the knowledge and skills to navigate these complicated systems, advocate for their rights, and represent their culture with confidence.
Exactly. But they don't just focus on westernized education. They're also really passionate about vitalizing their own language and traditional knowledge systems. They know that these are essential parts of their identity that need to be nurtured alongside modern education.
It's like they're building a bridge between the wisdom of their ancestors and the demands of the modern world, making sure that both are respected. And how does this approach to education influence their political engagement?
Well, their political engagement is both practical and principled. They're actively involved in politics at both the local and national level, advocating for policies that protect their land rights, promote cultural diversity, and empower indigenous communities. They understand that having a voice in the decision-making process is crucial.
So they're not just sitting back and accepting things as they are, they're working within the system to make positive changes for themselves and other indigenous groups.
Exactly. They're open to collaboration and finding common ground, but they're not afraid to challenge the status quo when it's necessary. And it's this combination of diplomacy and a strong commitment to their values that makes them so effective.
It's inspiring to see them taking charge of their own destiny while also being part of a larger movement for indigenous rights and recognition.
Their story shows just how powerful collective action can be and how important solidarity is among indigenous communities.
Speaking of solidarity, I'm curious about their relationships with other Naga tribes. We've been focusing on the Lotha Naga specifically, but I know there are many other Naga groups in that area. How do they navigate those relationships, especially considering that some tribes have had conflicts and rivalries in the past?
That's a really great question, and it points to a complex and evolving dynamic. While there have been tensions historically, there's been a growing movement towards Panaga unity in recent years. They're beginning to realize that they share common goals and interests that go beyond their individual tribal identities.
So they're starting to see that their strength lies in their collective identity as Naga people, united by their shared history, culture, and vision for the future.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And by working together, they can have a stronger voice, more bargaining power, and be more effective in advocating for the rights and well-being of all Naga people.
It's really a testament to the power of reconciliation and collaboration, even when there's a history of division, especially when people are bound together by shared values and a common goal.
And the Lotha Naga, with their history of diplomacy and bridge building, are playing a big role in fostering this Pinaga solidarity. They're actively contributing to a larger movement focused on reclaiming cultural identity, asserting self-determination, and creating a future where Indigenous voices are heard and respected.
It's a really inspiring story. It shows the resilience of the human spirit and the power of culture to bring people together and lift them up. Their journey gives us hope. It demonstrates that even when faced with huge challenges, progress is possible.
The Lotha Naga teach us that progress doesn't have to come at the cost of tradition. They've shown us that it's possible to embrace the opportunities of the modern world without abandoning the wisdom of our ancestors.
Their story is a powerful reminder that preserving culture is about more than just museums and artifacts. It's about living our values, passing down our traditions, and finding ways to make our heritage relevant and meaningful in a world that's always changing.
The Lotha Naga, with their unique blend of tradition and progress, their unwavering commitment to education and political engagement, and their dedication to preserving their cultural heritage, are a shining example of how Indigenous communities around the world can not only survive but truly thrive in the 21st century.
They've proven that cultural identity isn't a fixed thing. It can evolve and adapt without losing its heart. It's an important message that goes far beyond Nagaland. It offers hope and inspiration to anyone trying to preserve their heritage in our rapidly changing world.
Their journey reminds us that a future where we celebrate cultural diversity, where we hear and respect Indigenous voices, and where tradition and progress go hand in hand, is not just a dream, it's something we can actually achieve.
This has been a fantastic deep dive. The story of the Lotha Naga is a true testament to the strength of cultural resilience, the beauty of human adaptability, and the importance of finding harmony between tradition and progress.
Their journey shows us that we can honor our past while creating our future, embrace new ideas without sacrificing our values, and come together to create a world where we celebrate diversity and every voice is heard.
And on that note, it's time for us to wrap up this incredible journey into the heart of Lotha Naga culture. But before we go, I want to leave you with one last thought to think about. What can we learn from the Lotha Naga and their approach to balancing tradition and progress? How can we apply their wisdom to our own lives, communities, and hopes for the future?
It's a question worth considering. Their story reminds us that preserving culture isn't just about safeguarding the past, it's about actively creating a future where our heritage can continue to thrive and inspire future generations.
Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible exploration of the Lotha Naga people. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep searching for those stories that remind us of the beauty and resilience of